Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today and listening. We've got a phenomenal guest today. We're going to be taking a break from the Dad's Guide to Divorce because this topic was incredibly important to me that came up. And so we're going to be talking about fatherhood in the age of mediocrity. But before I introduce my guest, got a couple of show notes. First, wanted to welcome Zach and Andy to the Divorced Advocate community. And if you're not part of our community, check it out at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Get the support that you need. We've got everything and anything from free to paid resources wherever you're at and whatever you need. We have it at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Also wanted to mention that the new fan mail feature on our podcast episodes, I'm getting your fan mail. I'm not able to respond to it. So starting next week, I will be putting in a segment of responding to the fan mail each week as things come in. So don't stop doing that because I'm not responding. I will respond on air and in the show. So let me introduce my guest today. He is a father, husband, grandfather, mentor, friend, bow hunter. You bow hunters are amazing. I'm a hunter, but not skilled enough as you are. Lover of the outdoors, and also a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Colorado. His practice specialty is manhood, masculinity, and relationships, and is continually exploring new avenues of strength, vitality, and purpose for himself and the men he works with. He works from the premise that masculinity is good, that each man brings significance into our world, and that men have been designed to move with freedom, presence, and strength. Along with individual and relationship counseling, he provides groups for men to build personal integrity and strength so men will influence their world with intent and passion. And he's also got the website solidman.com. Please welcome Ken Curry to the show. Ken, great to see you again.
Thanks, Jude. What a good introduction.
Yeah, man. That. Well, you are a Renaissance man. And so I was mentioned to you just briefly as we got here in the studio that this idea for the podcast came to me literally yesterday morning, and I want to sincerely thank you for on short notice jumping on with me to talk about it. But it's a genesis of just experiences that I've been having recently, and not just recently, but in the short term, several years, but with the assassination that has attempt that went on, which is just a terrible, awful thing to see a young man that decided to do something so horrific. And then, just having some other experiences, like I was mentioning also that in the grocery store the other day, just having a checker on her phone, watching TV with their earbud in. And these are the people that actually can get to work. Right. But this whole mindset of mediocrity and just not having an aim in life and just kind of floating along, and how that impacts us as fathers. Because I know that I have literally battled against this with my children and their experiences in school with their friends, et cetera. And so I just wanted us to have a conversation. I was thinking, man, who could I talk to about this? And you were the first name that came to the top of my head because I know all the work. I know some of your background, and maybe you can share a little bit of that with us, and the work that you do. And I just wanted us to have a conversation around that for the dads that are going through divorce, but also the dads that are post-divorce, and the dads that are going through divorce, knowing that there is high probability there's going to be a battle around making, creating that discipline, having that authoritative mindset that dads bring to their children, et cetera. That's become a battleground literally these days. So I'll take from there, share a little bit about you, but then let's also dive into that.
Yeah, so just a little bit about me. The thing said I was the introduction really gave me I'm a father. I've got 3 kids. They're all adults now. I've now got 2 grandsons,
Nice.
3 and 9 months. And that's been a lot of fun. That's been a big shift with my wife and I, being able to, how do we do grandkids? And it's been a lot of fun, but it's creating in me the similar thing to what you're talking about is, how are these boys going to grow up in this world? And a lot of things you're talking about, the whole thing of how people use social media, the idea of, social media has come in and become such a massive thing in our world. I was just telling you, we were off doing our 40th anniversary trip this last week, and we were on a cruise. And we're in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, going through the Norwegian fjords, going in and out of there. Those things are fantastic. It's just beautiful. And when we're on the ship, it's like people are just stuck on their phone. And we're going, what is this? What is this? You're in a place that's just incredibly beautiful. And so many people, especially with the kids, and there's a lot of families there, and a lot of the families, just the screen time, give the kid a iPad and just kind of hope he's going to be okay. It's just that is kind of how parenting is done. And even with the individuals, how everybody just seems like screens and looking at your phone is the thing. And it just seems really unfortunate, especially when you think about something that we were doing. We just noticed it everywhere. And we're in this really beautiful place, and there's so many things to experience. And yet you find the need to be on your cell phone. Yeah. And it's like, that seems to me really problematic. And I think mostly the big word that kind of comes to me, Jude, when you're talking about this is the idea of presence. And for a father, that to me is one of the most significant things that a man has to be able to provide. We talk about how fathers provide and protect as 2 really significant things that men do as far as being fathers. And I think the idea of provide, oftentimes what we'll think about, what do we provide, is money, shelter, safety, education, all the stuff that men want to provide, make sure their kids are doing okay. But the most important thing that a man has to provide is his presence. Yeah. And it's being there, and it's being attentive, and it's literally being there, not just with my physical body, but my attention. Because your attention and your presence, your attention is one of the most valuable things that you have to offer the world. It's one of the most significant things. And so if you think about attention, that is the currency or the commodity that is being bought and sold in the whole social media world, right? Yeah. It's like, your attention is what makes Facebook work or what makes Instagram work. When your eyes are looking at that thing, then they have the ads and all this, and that's how they make their money, is your attention. And you got to realize, my attention is easily one of the most valuable things that I have to offer. Not only does it pay the rent for, not just the rent, but to billionaires who own those companies, but you got to look at this and go, this is what I have to give my children. Yeah. And my attention, my presence is I think it's the most important thing that a man has to provide. And so in this world, you're talking about mediocrity and all this, and how we get so distracted on these things that are completely irrelevant. Not necessarily saying something like the really tragic thing that happened with the attempted assassination. I mean, that's something we need to know what's going on here. But the whole thing of how we get distracted, just generally, how we just kind of go to our phone when we wake up, or when we have when we're waiting in line, or whatever. It's just like, boom, it just gets our attention. And so I think that's the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about this whole idea of mediocrity and fathering and how do men actually navigate this. That's the first thing that comes to mind, Jude, as far as thinking, what's the challenge for men is to give my attention to my children.
Yeah.
And that's and what I'm doing with my attention is I'm giving them me.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful thing. And whether it's with my kids or it's whoever I'm with at any given moment, it could be my wife, it could be who's really special to me. But we're specifically talking about your dads.
Yeah. So
what are you thinking about all that?
Well, no.
Jude?
One of my first thoughts was, and what questions was going to be around, what do you feel are the origins of this mediocrity? So you read my mind, and we did, obviously we don't script this, but this is why I call smart people like you to be on the show, because you got a much better idea around this. So what I'm hearing you say though is that parenting is one of the big challenges that may be the origin around this mediocrity, and the ability to really be present in parenting and mitigate the challenges of stuff like social media that is now, every generation has had a challenge that has drawn away from presence, right? Like it could have been a radio, it could have been TV, it could have been sporting events. So over time, that's always been the case. There's always been jockeying against presence and parenting and being able to focus on what you need to do. So you answered that question for me, which I would wholeheartedly agree with. In that, as parents, and particularly as dads, and we are tasked with, and it's natural for us to be able to provide that guidance, that discipline, that focus, et cetera. That's just a masculine nature. And the book, The Boy Crisis, Dr. Farrell talks a lot about the differences in this, and why men and boys may be struggling these days. And he does talk about exactly that, the differences between what dads bring to parenting, and the difference to what moms bring to parenting. And when we get into divorce now, and you have separate households, you got dad's household and you got mom's household, what I find with a lot of guys that I work with, and it's been my personal experience too, is that then that household with mom becomes a different experience and environment than the household with dad, which is a different environment and experience. And because men and women, fathers and mothers, parent differently, in the ideal situation where you're parenting together, those are they complement each other, and they help to guide the children and have them grow up to be healthy, functioning adults. Now it can become, if there's at least one unhealthy person in that dynamic, adversarial and unhealthy to the children too, because then one gets emphasized. And then we could speak also to a little bit about the emphasis on motherhood and mothers know best and feminine presence, et cetera, because I think that, along with that glamorizing of single motherhood, there's also been a diminishment of fatherhood and the importance of fathers in their children's lives.
Yeah, the diminishment, that it is, to me, it's really tragic. It is completely a tragic thing, and I see it too often, not just personally in my own family and some of my relatives, of their experience, but also just a lot of the men that I work with. It's just been really tough. It's rare that I see an occasion where the court system actually respects the father. It just doesn't happen enough. And I mean, there's a number of different reasons for that, but I'm not sure, Jude, exactly what the question is that you're asking right now. Are you kind of asking, what do I see as the difference between those two, the mother and father type of thing?
Yeah, let's talk about let's talk about the because you're an expert in this. You do work with men. You see the dynamics in practice between the two. Let's talk about, because I know I hear from guys all the time, and I know I felt this way too. Like, am I crazy? I just want my kids to take out the trash. I want my kids to be respectful. I want the kids to get like I want them to have focus. I want them to have some discipline. I'm not an authoritarian, but there is authoritative stuff. Like I have expectations for them. Like these are high expectations, and those get undermined and diminished not only by the court system, but oftentimes with mothers who don't think that way. And that's okay not for them to think that way, except diminishing it and saying that it's wrong, and then doing things even worse, which I see all the time. And I understand that I'm in a little bubble here. It's not everybody, but then alienating children from that because they think that their way is the right way, et cetera. So what can guys, what are the signs of a healthy father? Let's talk about that first, and that dynamic, so that guys that are doing this as fathers don't feel like, well, am I wrong? Am I being too harsh, et cetera?
Yeah, I think the thing is being able to think about generally, and you were talking about the best case scenario of mom and dad in the intact family and all that. And so when mom and dad bring a complementary energy into the relationship, that's really what we want. And let me kind of explain what those energies are real quick, and then think about how does that actually play out if it's in a family that's not intact. And so the whole thing of the mom's energy primarily is what I would call well-being. I forget how Warren Farrell might say it in that book. You'd said he kind of claimed or defines it, but for me, it's well-being. The mom is about safety. It's about security, making sure the kids are okay, all this. And it's about well-being. I want my kids to be okay. A father's energy is about confidence. I want my kids to have the capacity to be able to navigate life with confidence, to be able to know I can handle it. I got this. And when you have a dad, man, when he knows my kids are 18 and they're headed out on their own and they got the capacity to navigate life and they got confidence, man, his heart just wells up. Go, do it, kid, go. Whereas mom, she's still scared, going, oh my gosh, my kid's leaving. I no longer have any control over their well-being. Are they going to be okay? That type of thing. And so it's like, or when the kid goes off to spend time with friends, mom always says, be careful. And dad always says, have fun.
Right?
Yeah. It's just a different energy that mom and dad has. And so the whole thing of being a father, if it's just you now kind of have both those energies that you have to navigate. And so how do I actually consider well-being? How do I consider safety and security within my home while my kids are with me? While I work on the whole idea of discipline, because discipline and creating moments where things aren't as easy, life isn't fair, and dads are like, kids, life isn't fair. I mean, we are on top of that, and we know it, and we're willing to allow our kids to be in difficult situations where they might get hurt and scrape a knee or even break a bone. It's like we want our kids to get out there and try stuff and feel what it's like, because that's what builds resilience and grit in a kid. And that's what brings confidence. And that's what we want as dad. But oftentimes it kind of might push it a little bit too far to a degree. And so when we're talking about having both the energies, I have to make sure that I create a safe environment for my children. I have to be aware of that. And while at the same time building that confidence and building their negative capacity to handle difficult things, because that's what dads do.
Right.
And so we want to have fun. We want to have adventure. We want to go test things. We want to try hard things and things like that. And allowing our kids to experience those things instead of giving them a bubble or hovering around being a helicopter parent. It's like I want my kids to experience what it feels like to lose a ball game or to get hurt or to feel the pain of losing, somebody dying or something like that. I want my kids to experience what life is really all about. And so that's kind of the father energy. I hope I'm kind of making sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think this is hard, particularly in the environment that I just described, but also for those of us that are men that did not maybe have a father figure that helped us to understand what this is. So for me, learning what you just described succinctly and in a couple of minutes has taken me decades. right? So, being able to have men hear that and say, oh, this is that natural energy that I feel when I just simply ask my children to do something, because I know that by them doing something every day that they're supposed to do, that's going to lead to something better in the future. Whereas mom's like, well, they're tired or whatever. And, again, it's that nurturing and whatever. It's complementary. It can be both, but you're not wrong in wanting to have them have a focus or a discipline or whatever else. So yeah, absolutely. Yep. So let's talk about the feminine then.
So the feminine side of it really is the whole thing of just making sure everybody's safe and okay. And you kind of described it there, they're tired and all that. There's either one of these can be taken, you got your spectrum, and they can swing the pendulum to being way too much, like being a helicopter parent,
right?
Or really worried about my kids ever get hurt, because then they're never going to experience anything. So the feminine, the mother energy, if it's taken too far, their kids aren't going to be disciplined. They're never going to be challenged. They're never going to have a structure around them that's going to create the necessity or the importance of taking the trash out or picking up the dog poop or whatever it is, right? Ooh, that's gross. Yes, it is. Now get out there and do it. It's like, and my brother doesn't have to do it. Well, life isn't fair.
Right.
This is your job right now. I mean, that's a dad's energy, right? But the feminine will kind of swing it too far. And oftentimes, and this is what's really unfortunate, oftentimes when the one person, like let's say with the, I call it a not an intact family. The father's over here when he has the kids, the mom's over here. And usually what happens is the pendulum swung where that energy becomes the dynamic of the home at that point.
Yes.
So when the kids go over to mom, they don't have discipline. They don't have the challenges. They don't have the structure that you might have as a dad. And it's like, it doesn't matter. The thing about it is oftentimes what I'll hear dads, they'll feel very reluctant or hesitant to create the strong boundaries and the really significant structure in the family, because they'll go, when my kids come over here, they're not going to like being here. They're going to rather be with mom because mom doesn't call them out to do these things. And it's like, yeah, that might be true. But when it comes down to it, as the kids get older, they respect it a lot more.
Yes.
And oftentimes the kids, they understand what it is, especially if you're not just being a domineering character, but you have a lot of fun with life as well.
Sure.
And that's why I bring the idea of adventure in, because adventure is just going out and having a lot of fun, but doing tough things, going for a tough hike or going, canoeing or doing something that is fun, but has the capacity or the potential to create some kind of stress, right?
Right.
Oh, my arms are killing me, or I can't walk anymore, or I need whatever it is, right? That's what dads do. And so I guess what I'm saying is not just don't hesitate, just see it as this is how I need to do it. And I would say having the structure, having the boundaries, having the rules is a really significant thing. But balancing it with the flexibility of having fun and enjoying life, and because in family therapy, one of the categories is flexibility and rigidity.
Mm-hmm.
As a family therapist would look at a family, and if a family moves over too much on flexibility, that means there's no rules, there's no structure. The kid, you don't have bedtime at a certain time, you don't have food at a certain time. Some families without structure don't even know when they're going to eat or if they're going to eat.
Yeah.
It's that kind of, it's that flexible. But then some families are too rigid. They have too many rules. It's the old movie, The Great Santini, kind of it's a military family, where it's like you line up and you get inspected before you go to school type of thing. And everybody has to do their thing, what they have to do, their chores before they go to bed or before you even eat or whatever. It's too rigid. And so what you want is a really good balance between structure and flexibility.
Right.
And that's what you're looking for. And so being able to see that that's what we want is being able to go, I need to have structure in my family, but yet a good level of flexibility. Where sometimes, okay, today we're taking off from our chores or we're going to go do this.
Right.
And so there's a time for that. So I hope that helps. I don't know if that really explains the masculine and feminine much, but
I think no,
Yeah.
I think it does in the context that I wanted to have this conversation about mediocrity, because what it seems like is, with this emphasis on motherhood and on mothers know best, and single mothers as a superpower, like whatever slogan you want to, they've got a million of them now, which is great, because it is hard being a single parent, whether you're a single mother
Absolutely,
or a single father. So I don't want to diminish the fact that single motherhood is not hard, because it definitely is.
Absolutely.
But as we have moved into, or moved towards that being like the way that you're supposed to parent, in what you just described, which is, if it goes too far to that spectrum, that's where we get the failure to launch. This is where we get the what is happening now, and oftentimes where the courts are moving, ever increasingly moving this age limit of where the kids can decide what parent they want to be with. It's, it used to be like 18. Okay, that's the age, and they're off. They're basically adults. Now it's like it was 16.
Oh yeah.
Now they're really pushing like, oh, they're 13. They can decide where they want to go. And this is absolute crap, because even at 18, 19, 20, they don't have the development and the knowledge to know or understand the simplicity of how important taking the trash out is in their adult life, and how that's going to serve them in their adult life. And so if they don't like that, they say, I want to go stay with mom because it's going to be comfier.
She lets
at
me
mom's.
play video games for 8 hours.
Exactly. Which I want the men that are listening to understand. And you used a great word, and it's boundaries. These boundaries are important, and creating these expectations around and boundaries is an important thing. And so let's talk about you touched on it a little bit also, the difference between authoritative and authoritarian, because this is starting to be language in the family law court that we're hearing that is being used against men. And it's really divisive, because it's subjective. Because I told him to take out a trash in a bit mean tone, that's authoritarian, right? And you're an authoritarian parent, and you're not, you're too harsh on them, as opposed to the opposite, which I did it in a fun manner or an adventurous manner or whatever. So let's talk about that.
I didn't do it.
Right. Exactly.
Or just kind of let them, okay, I'll take out the trash.
Exactly.
And oftentimes the thing about it is it becomes, when our children don't respond to us, oftentimes what happens is it becomes something very frustrating to us, and we lose our emotional, what would you call that?
Presence. Yeah, control.
Well, it's emotional presence. It's control. I was thinking of the actual word of where I'm emotionally controlled and I'm stable, and I don't let the frustrations get to where it becomes something where I get
composed.
Take the damn trash out, whatever. Where I maintain my composure, and that's a really, really important part of this whole thing. Because when I get intense or when I get aggressive or that type of thing, that's what really isn't. I don't think it's appropriate anyway. But when you start talking about authoritarian, when I become a controlling parent, where it's like you have to do this, and if you and it becomes it's a totally different kind of posture, and it's a different kind of power that you have. My power is over you. I'm controlling you. I'm making you do something. That's kind of the control that we don't want to experience, is that power over. But as a dad, you want your power for your kids. I want to teach my kids how to do life, where they're doing this well, where I'm teaching them how that taking out the trash is part of responsibility, part of how you do life. It's just, this is life. And so where it's not something I'm telling them to do or them controlling them to do, but it's something that we do. This is just what we do in this house. We do our chores, we chip in, we care for each other. It's more of the overarching values that I have as a family, rather than forcing them to do something. Does that make sense, Jude?
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
That's different. And so my authority as a parent is I dictate the values that we have as a family.
Right.
I dictate the structure that we have. I'm saying bedtimes at this time, or dinner times at this time, or this is the type of food we eat, or this is what we do on our off time, or this is how much screen time you get during the day. I'm able to dictate that. I have that authority, right? But as far as how I'm able to make that happen, or to that's where, do I have to be an authoritarian, or do I have an authority where my authority is respected? And what's really hard, Jude, and this is what you're talking about, is our kids come from another place that they don't have. They may not have any of that structure, and then all of a sudden they step into our home, and it's as though they have to do a mental shift. Sometimes it takes a while, where they have to shift because now they're in a completely different system, and this system that they're in has a different structure.
Yeah,
it has a different value system. It has a different way of doing things, different boundaries. Like I was saying with the, and so that shift, it's really interesting because I knew a family once that he was actually a linguist. He studied at the University of Oregon, and he knew multiple languages, but his kids knew 5 different languages, and they had 3 kids. And we're interacting with the kids, and the mother she's Norwegian. She was talking in Norwegian, and then the kids turned to me, and you can see their head going into English, right? You can just see them shift into another category.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating how language was with this family. But what I'm talking about is kids making that shift,
right?
Where it's like, do. Now I'm in a different system, and you have to allow your kids to be able to do that. But that's part of when my kids come into my home, I recognize that they're coming into a completely different way of doing things.
Right.
And recognizing and shifting from where they're at and whatever mom's doing with them to coming into this. But that's where the boundaries and the structure, I have to hold fast.
Yes.
With exactly, this is the way this house is.
Yes.
And being able to, and letting them make the shift. And if they don't make the shift, guiding them to be able to shift. This is where you're at right now.
Yeah, and let's talk about that too. Is holding fast too, because what I see a lot of times is fathers fearful around that because of the fallout that can happen in the family law system, as well as dealing with an ex that might be vindictive. And I've experienced it myself. Hours of depositions of why did you do this? Why did you do that? CFI investigation, parental responsibility evaluations, where they're going into detail and asking ridiculous questions of.
And the hardest part of this, Jude, is that what I'm talking about right now is how to do a healthy family, how to have a healthy family structure, and everything, and being able to have boundaries and systems in place, and the structure, like I said, 8:00 bedtime or whatever it is. It's like or 1 hour of screen time a day, or whatever it is that you have as your structure. It's like that is seen as authoritarian, or that is seen as unhealthy in the family courts. And I'm going, who the heck is running this thing?
It's insanity.
Because it is insanity. Because like you, okay, so part of what you were talking at the very beginning is how does a dad feel like he's not crazy?
Yeah.
Because the courts are saying, don't be so rough on your kids, or don't have so many boundaries, or don't, whatever it is. And they're going, yeah, but that's what healthy families are.
Yeah.
Is having, like I said, a really good balance between structure and flexibility. Right. And you're going, I'm trying my best here. And the hesitation, I think, to your point, the fear, if I do this too much, will I get backlash from the court? Or, like you said, when my kid's 13, will they pick being with mom because mom lets them do 8 hours of video games a day, or whatever it is, right? Yep. And you're going, is that my fear that I'm going to lose my kids, if I am healthy with how I do my family?
It's not a fear. It's happening, and it's happening all across the country and all across the world, unfortunately. And you talk about how do we not feel crazy? And that's the question I ask, because it seems that when they go to school, on social media, everywhere, there's not that message of what we are describing here. There's a few that are out there, but it's not prevalent. And I've literally sat in in therapist's office with a therapist with my daughters, and the therapist says, "Well, do you want to hold to this disciplinary issue and boundary, or do you want to have a relationship with your children?" And I'm like, these are not mutually exclusive. And if you're going to make me pick one, I'm going to pick the disciplinary boundary, because if I don't have a relationship with them and they grow up to be healthy, functioning adults, but they don't like me, but I accomplished my job as a dad, because that's my job. My job isn't to be their friend or to raise them to have a healthy relationship with me, but to have a dysfunctional relationship with themselves and everybody else in the world, then I will pick that. And that's exactly what I said. But this is with a therapist in front of my daughters. And it's so when us dads are in this, sometimes it's like, I'm not crazy. Like if I hadn't been through the 7, 8, 9 years before in dealing with this, I'd have walked out of there and been like, I'm a terrible dad. I'm not doing this right, which is completely not true. Not at all true. And this was not a major issue. And that is what the therapist said to me. And so I say that for the dads listening, that get involved, and let's talk about maybe some ways that we can feel comfortable with that. Understand, like you've got your men's group, the Solid Men, and we've got the Divorced Advocate. There's other men's groups out there. Like give some ideas and tips of what guys can do so that they're not feeling crazy, that the way that they're being dads is important. And I want to preface that also with every study out there, and everybody who listens to more than one episode hears me say this. I try to say it every episode, shows that the most important thing that you can possibly do is be involved in your children's lives. That is the number one indicator of a child growing up to have a healthy and functioning adult life, is if their father is involved in their life. So
absolutely,
let's talk about how we do that and not feel crazy.
So what you're talking about, Jude, just first, I totally have a ton of empathy for the fact that, like the pickle you were put in that therapist's office, it's the same pickle that we're talking about. Do I have a strong sense of boundaries and structure within my family when my kids are with me? Or do I, the whole thing is that actually the mutually exclusive choice, that do I have a relationship with my kids, or to grow up really healthy individuals, right? It's like, it seems like that's at play. And probably the number one thing here, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with that choice or what I'm doing as a parent, but it's more of who am I as a man? And being able to doing the work to become a strong, internally referenced man, where I know who I am, I know what I want, I know what my values are, I know what my moral compass is, and I have this internal frame. And your internal frame is a very similar thing to like a frame in your house.
Right.
I've got my concrete foundation with the footers. I've got the base plates. I've got the studs. I've got the headers. I've got the joists. That's what my house is made of, and it's frame. Right. And it's not going to move. And it's a strong structure. And we want to be able to build a very similar strong frame within us. And so if I don't have a strong internal frame where I don't really know who I am, I don't really know what my values are, and I'm dealing with shame myself for the whole idea of not feeling like I'm good enough or something's wrong with me, then I'm going to have a hard time doing life, period. And so being able to do the work to build a really strong internal frame is probably the most important thing that a dad can do, so that what he has to bring to his kids is strong and it's secure. And so when he moves toward his kids, he knows who he is and what he wants and how he interacts, because he has more of that emotional, what do we call it? I still can't find the word. Regulation. That's
composure. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, exactly. Because I'm aware of what's going on inside of me, and I'm aware of my emotional process and all the different things within. And that is probably the most important work that a man can do. And however you would ever want to do that, there's a ton of good books out there. There's a ton of that's what my men's group, individual work. There not a number of guys would be able to help you. There's a lot of ways to be able to build this internal frame, and even your own little doing your own group.
Yeah.
Having a reading, a book club where we're reading through some really good material, and working with it with other guys. And as long as you're working with somebody who knows what they're talking about of building the frame, or you're with other guys with that purpose where we all want to become strong men.
Right.
And that's what I meant when in your introduction, masculinity is good.
Yes.
And so often what we hear is masculinity is not good. You're not good because you're a man. Even the word patriarchy, and this is literally what we're talking about, because the word patriarchy, patri is father, and archy is rule. So father rule. Think about this. We were just talking about it. How does a dad do father rule in his own home when his kids are in his own home? That's patriarchy. How does a dad and see, that's the thing that because patriarchy is like the evil. It's so evil in our world now.
Right.
But it's not. It's a beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing when a dad actually has leadership in his family.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing. And so being able to think about it and go, me ruling and me leading my family is a really beautiful thing. It's not a heinous thing that's like this controlling over and oppressive and all this.
Right.
And so, gosh, what am I saying?
Yeah,
I'm saying a lot of stuff. Jude,
well,
go ahead.
No, I think you summed it up beautifully, because basically what you said is don't isolate, get involved. However you want to do that. That could be therapy. Just know that that you've got a therapist that understands masculinity. We talk about this too, and I've done episodes on questions to ask your therapist before getting in there. And some of that is around what you're talking about, what's your view on patriarchy, how do you feel about toxic masculinity, some of those questions.
Absolutely.
Because look, just like any profession, there's a lot of crappy therapists, just like there's a lot of crappy plumbers or whatever. You got to interview to know. So just don't trust the first one. If you don't feel comfortable, go and look for other ones, but find other resources too. Other guys, start your own. A book club is a great idea.
And do the work. That's really what I'm saying. Yeah. The big thing, to answer your question, what do my kids need? They need a dad who is solid, a dad who knows who he is, a dad who has that internal frame of identity and values and moral compass and his faith and everything, that I'm really aware of all this in me, and I'm able to move forward with the confidence with who I am.
Right.
That's really the big thing that I wanted to say, Jude.
Right. And during divorce, this is an opportunity to do that. Your world is changing. It's going to change whether you like it or not. It's probably, and I could say 99% of the guys that I talk to, it's an opportunity and a time for self-reflection and really understanding what's going on in your life, because it's one of the most difficult things that you're going to go through. So it is, and you don't have to do it all at once. Like, we don't have to fix it all at once. We don't have to figure it out all at once. You're not ever going to figure it all out, right? Because even at our advanced age, Ken, we haven't figured it all out, but we've got, we're just a little bit ahead of where somebody who's listening might be. So just take that time and do that work. I think that's the perfect thing. Don't self-isolate, get involved with other men, seek help. That's another hard thing for men sometimes.
It is,
because those of us who've been through it want to help. We want to be there. We want to mentor. We want to share our experiences as well. And when you start to do that, and I don't know what your experience is, but when I started to share those things and heard from guys speaking back the same stuff that was going in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy. Oh, wow,
I am not alone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. It's such a big thing. Because you said don't isolate. I didn't use that word, but that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
That is probably one of the most significant problems that men have in our world today. I think that's why we have such a horrible suicide rate.
Yes.
Because men are isolating, and it literally will save your life to get involved with other guys.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. So, Ken, before we wrap up, share with how the audience can connect with you and get involved with you.
Sure. My website's kind of been wonky lately, but it does share a little bit of information, the solidman.com. But probably the best way to get a hold of me would be my email, kencurrylmft@gmail.com. So it's kencurrylmft@gmail.com. Is probably the best way to directly get a hold of me, for sure.
Okay. And for those listening, that's CURRYLMFT.
Exactly.
KENCURRYLMFT at what? Gmail.com. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Ken, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the short notice. Man, you just hit it out of the ballpark. I knew you were the man to talk about this, but I sincerely appreciate all the work that you do and our shared passion for helping men and the impact that has on the world in general. So thank you. I sincerely appreciate it.
It's an honor, Jude. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.